Hey guys, this is Andrew from Above the Film, and if you could please tell us your name and what you do.
Sure, Andrew. My name's Greg Miller. I work for IGN.com. I'm the executive editor of all things PlayStation. So basically, if a PlayStation story goes up on IGN and it's in one of the covers, I've probably slotted it or helped in some way getting there. A lot of people behind me, but I have to be the figurehead of IGN for PlayStation coverage and make sure we're hitting what we should need to be doing and covering what we need to be doing. I also co-host Podcast Beyond, the #1 PlayStation podcast on the internet. Beyond, if you're watching.
There you go. Now, how do you get a job like that? How did that come about?
Which part? Being in general at IGN, you try really hard. It's everybody's journey is different, and mine was, I guess, more traditional than most. There's a lot of people who just had an English degree and I want to write there, and then there's plenty of people who worked in the beginnings of IGN who had no degree. I knew early on I wanted to write about video games. In the 4th grade, I had an issue of Game Pro that on the cover was Maximum Carnage, and on the inside was Death and Return of Superman. And for a month, I read it cover to cover, and I'd call Toys R Us every day and ask if they had Death and Return of Superman, because this is before the internet. I know, kids, it existed. And you had to call, and then they had no idea, and the store associates, they didn't know any more than you did generally. And so after a month of that, I remember finishing the magazine and being like, wait, somebody got paid to make this. And so I walked into the kitchen and said, hey, Mom, I know what I want to do with my life.
That's
and
awesome.
She said, what? And I was like, I want to do this. And so, to the credit of my parents and to every parent out there, nobody laughed and we said, okay, great, we'll make that happen. We'll help you to try to do that if that's what you want to do. And so, I wrote for the school papers, and I eventually had a mentor who said to me, if you really want to do this, you need to go to Mizzou, University of Missouri, one of the top journalism schools in the world. It's the top, but I try to play safe and say no in case there's a Medill kid watching. But I went to the University of Missouri, I got a degree, and I was there, and I'm like, I'm going to get this degree, and I'm going to be able to just write my own check. I'm going to leave here and be like, every magazine and site's going to want to pick. Nobody would touch me. Because what nobody told me at the time was, when I was coming up, is that so much of it, you need to prove that you can do it. You need experience. And while granted, because Mizzou's such a great program, I had hundreds of clips that showed I could write about anything. I had newspaper and magazine articles when I left there. The problem was, as far as video game themed, I only had one every 6 months maybe. It was you have to kind of float them by your editor, and that's hard to do. And so it wasn't showing I could do it on a daily basis. So I graduated college, and I went to work at a daily newspaper in the middle of Missouri called the Columbia Daily Tribune. And I worked there as a general assignment reporter for about a year and a half. And in that last half a year, I finally convinced them to give me a video game column weekly in the magazine, and then a blog every day, whenever I wanted to post it, but I did it every day. And so after the first time, I have it all on my Gmail. So as long as I had Gmail, which is, once I graduated college or was about to, I had 12 applications to IGN for various positions, rejected on every account.
Oh,
and not even rejected in the way of, you didn't meet our criteria, thank you, good day, just never a response. And so on that final time I applied, it was my first time applying, and I had that 6 months of, I can write on a daily basis, and I got contacted, interviewed, and hired within 24 hours.
Wow.
So, that's how fast it can happen, and it basically, for anybody out there, for any aspiring person, the answer to get in now is to write. You have to write, and then you have to start networking. You know what I mean? Write for a fan blog, write for a fan site, make your own site, whatever you can do, because you have to hone that craft, you know what I mean? When I started, even at IGN, I hadn't written many reviews. So my first reviews are really shaky, you're trying to find your footing in what you want to say and how you format a review, and that's tough, even as a fan who's read for years and years and years. So, write as much as you can, and then don't be afraid to approach people and talk to people. At events especially, last night we did a live podcast here at New York Comic Con, and a girl in there got up on the mic and she's like, I just wanted to say, you guys really helped me find my way, and I definitely, enjoy this, and I want to do it too, and I've been writing more and more, and I was like, oh, well, give me your card. And that's all it is.
Awesome.
And there was no guarantee. She could suck, I don't know, she could be a terrible writer, but you put your foot in the door and you try to make these connections and you try to talk to people. Because that's the big thing people lose, you know what I mean? We do this panel and then we go outside and people want us to sign shirts or things, and that's awesome and I love it, and I'm happy to be a personality in a face of, video games for a lot of people, but I'm just a dude, you know what I mean? I'm just a dude with the platform. You have a site, you're in the same position where you've just gone in a different direction. I still write and make videos and talk to people about games on podcasts like I'm in my basement back in Glen Ellen, Illinois, just sitting there with my friends telling them why this year's NCAA is better than last year's, man. Oh, you don't even know, you know what I mean? And that's all this is, and you can't get inflated head about that. You have to keep it going. That was a long answer to one question. I'll try to make them shorter.
That works. That's cool. All right, so one last question for you, if that's right. Favorite video game of all time?
Favorite video game of all time at the current moment, because it can change any day. Metal Gear Solid on PS1. It was one of those things for me, like, I wouldn't say I felt like I was starting to grow out of video games, because I think for a long time they were Mario, and they were Sonic, and that's what they were. And it was one of those things where, you know, I'm lucky enough to be, you know, 20-some years old now, almost 30, geez, and I've kind of seen video games grow with me, right? Like, expectations have kind of changed with them as they go. And it was just at that time, though, where I was playing these games and I'm like, well, you know, this isn't what I want. This isn't the experience I want. I want a story. I want a movie. I want to be like connected to something. But I didn't know that at the time. And then I rented Metal Gear. I remember me and my friend rented Metal Gear and Army Men, whatever, Sarge's Heroes. I forget which one it was. And we went in and put in Metal Gear. We put in Army Men. And, it was terrible. I took it out. And then we put in Metal Gear and we just played Metal Gear all night, passing that controller back and forth. And it was just one of those things where from that opening cinematic of Snake swimming under the water, you don't even know what's happening yet, and the credits are rolling. There's beautiful music. It was like, for me, it was the turning point in video games where I sat there and played something and I was like, it can be so much more. It can be so much more than a question block you hit and get a mushroom and go do whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that, I think, for a lot of people, too, was this turning point in far as watching gaming as an industry mature into something bigger and grow with you. And now you see stuff like, you know, we're going in every direction, right? It's one of those things where there's still Metal Gear Solids, and then there's all these shooters, and then there's Kinect now for anybody who wants to go casual. Then, I mean, super casual. My mom owns a system, like a current generation system. That blows my mind. You know what I mean? Like, and handhelds and this and touch phones, and it's like, that was for me that first moment where the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my gosh, this can be anything.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time.
No, thank you for having me. Please, give me a handshake. Awesome. All right, now give me a Beyond.
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 Beyond.